Yeah, bye. You are a and so is your little small my employee. Yeah, okay. Well, he's a dude. Like you are a bitch. God bless you.
We've all seen the video. The camera is shaky, the background is a mundane grocery store or a quiet neighborhood street, and in the center of the frame is a person in a state of absolute and unhinged meltdown. They are screaming about a coupon, a manager, or a parking space. In the digital age, we've given this archetype a name: the Karen. It's a label that has become a global shorthand for a very specific blend of entitlement, anger, and a demand for a higher authority to intervene in a trivial situation. But while the internet loves to laugh at the spectacle, at the inverse mind, we want to look deeper. Behind the viral outbursts and the memes lies a complex, often tragic psychological landscape. When someone screams at a retail worker, they aren't just angry about a late latte, they are experiencing a profound internal crisis. Today, we are going to deconstruct the Karen archetype. We're going to look at the intersection of narcissistic vulnerability, the fear of losing control, and a psychological phenomenon called reactance. Most importantly, I'm going to give you a toolkit of practical, psychological strategies to handle these encounters without losing your own peace. Welcome back to The Inverse Mind. I'm David, and let's dive into the psychology of the entitled outburst. To understand the Karen phenomenon, we have to start by separating the meme from the human. The meme is a caricature, but the behavior is a defense mechanism. When you witness an adult having what looks like a toddler's tantrum in public, you are witnessing a nervous system in collapse. At the core of this behavior is a distorted sense of entitlement. In psychology, entitlement isn't just about wanting things. It's a cognitive bias where a person believes they are exempt from the rules that apply to everyone else. They believe their time is more valuable, their feelings are more urgent, and their needs are paramount. This often stems from a lack of self-object constancy. In simpler terms, if things aren't going perfectly right now, the entitled person feels as though their entire world and their very identity is being threatened. Think about the last time you saw an entitled outburst. It usually starts with a minor inconvenience, a mistake on a bill, or a slight delay. For a regulated person, this is a nuisance. But for the Karen, this is a direct assault on their status. Because their self-worth is often tied to external validation and social hierarchy. A no from a service worker feels like a demotion in life. They aren't fighting for a refund, they are fighting to prove they still matter. Why is this happening more often now? Why does it feel like public meltdowns are a new epidemic? To find the inverse truth, we have to look at the state of the world. We are living in an era of unprecedented global uncertainty. Economic shifts, political polarization, and the lingering effects of a global pandemic have left many people feeling utterly powerless over the big things in their lives. When a person feels they have no control over their health, their future, or their finances, they will often subconsciously overcompensate by trying to exert absolute control over the small things. This is displacement. The grocery store clerk becomes a proxy for every government official, her boss, or life circumstance that has made them feel small. When they demand to speak to the manager, they aren't just seeking a resolution. They are seeking the hit of power. They are trying to reclaim a sense of agency in a world that has stripped it away. The tragedy is that this power is an illusion. The high they get from winning a fight over a return policy is a temporary fix for a much deeper, underlying anxiety. They are screaming at the world because they are terrified that the world has stopped listening to them. We often throw around the word narcissist to describe entitled behavior, but it's more nuanced than that. Most Karens aren't necessarily full-blown narcissists. They are suffering from narcissistic vulnerability. A true narcissist has an inflated sense of self. But a person with narcissistic vulnerability has a fragile ego that is easily bruised. They rely on narcissistic supply, the attention, obedience, and respect of others to keep their sense of self intact. When a waiter forgets their order, it's not just a mistake, it's a narcissistic injury. This injury triggers what we call an amygdala hijack. The emotional center of the brain takes over, shutting down the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic and social etiquette. This is why you cannot reason with someone in the middle of a Karen episode. Their brain has literally entered survival mode. They are in a fight or flight state, and they have chosen to fight. They aren't ignoring your logic. They are biologically incapable of processing it in that moment. The psychological reactance to the no trigger. There is another layer to this, psychological reactance. This is the intense emotional response we feel when we perceive that our freedom of choice is being threatened. Most of us experience reactance when someone tells us we can't do something. But for the entitled archetype, reactance is dialed up to an 11. Because they view themselves as being at the top of a social hierarchy, any boundary set by someone they perceive as below them feels like an illegal seizure of their freedom. When a sign says masks required, or no returns without a receipt, most people see a rule. The Karen sees an attack. They feel a visceral and physical need to rebel against that rule to reclaim their autonomy. This is why their reactions are so disproportionate. They aren't reacting to the rule, they are reacting to the feeling of being controlled. The more you tell them they can't do something, the more their brain insists that they must do it to survive. In our previous videos, we've discussed Carl Jung's concept of the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we don't want to admit exist. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Part of the reason the Karen meme is so viral is because we see a distorted reflection of our own shadows in them. We all have moments where we feel entitled. We all have moments where we want to scream because the world isn't going our way. The Karen represents the part of the human psyche that has lost the ability to regulate that shadow. They are a cautionary tale of what happens when we stop doing the internal work of self-awareness. When we watch these videos, we aren't just laughing at them, we are distancing ourselves from the possibility that we could ever be that way. But the inverse mind perspective asks, where are the small ways you exert entitled control in your own life? By understanding the Karen in ourselves, we can develop a more sophisticated and effective way to handle the ones we encounter in the world. How to deal with a Karen. Now that we understand the why, let's talk about the how. How do you handle a confrontation with an entitled person without being dragged into their chaos? The goal is not to win the argument, because, as we've learned, they aren't in a state of mind where winning is possible. The goal is de-escalation and self-preservation. 1. The gray rock method. If you are being targeted by an entitled outburst, your most powerful weapon is boredom. People in this state are looking for an emotional reaction. They want you to get angry, defensive, or upset because it justifies their own rage. The technique is to become a gray rock. Give short, non-committal answers. Keep your voice at a constant, low monotone level. Do not explain yourself. Do not defend yourself. The goal is, by denying them an emotional hit, you make the interaction unrewarding for their brain. Eventually, their energy will burn out because they have nothing to feed on. 2. Strategic empathy. This is the hardest tool to use, but it's often the most effective. Instead of fighting their anger, you acknowledge the feeling behind it without agreeing with the facts. The technique, use phrases like, "I can see that this is incredibly frustrating for you," or, "It sounds like you've had a really difficult day." The goal, you aren't saying they are right. You are simply signaling to their hijacked amygdala that they have been heard. Often, the simple act of having their struggle acknowledged can lower their physiological stress levels enough for logic to slowly crawl back into the room. 3. The third-party boundary. Entitled people thrive on one-on-one conflict because they feel they can overpower you. To break this, you need to introduce an objective, third party, even if that party is just a rule or a policy. The technique is, instead of saying, "I won't do that," say, "The store policy doesn't allow for that." Instead of, "You can't talk to me that way," say, "The safety guidelines for this establishment require us to end the conversation if it becomes aggressive." The goal here is basically you are removing yourself from the power struggle. You aren't the enemy, the rule is the barrier. This allows you to maintain your dignity while giving them a wall they cannot climb over. 4. The exit strategy. The most important thing to remember in the psychology of entitlement is that you are not a therapist. It is not your job to fix their trauma or teach them a lesson in a grocery store aisle. The technique is to identify the point of diminishing returns. If the de-escalation isn't working, remove yourself physically. "I'm going to go find someone who can better assist you," or simply walking away. The goal is this: protecting your own peace is a radical act of self-care. When you engage with a Karen, you give them your time and emotional energy, the very things they feel entitled to. Taking those back is the ultimate way to win. As we wrap up, I want us to consider the long-term cost for the person behind the Karen behavior. While it's easy to see them as villains, from a psychological standpoint, they are living in a prison of their own making. Living in a constant state of entitlement and rage is exhausting. It destroys relationships, ruins reputations, and keeps the body in a state of chronic stress. The person screaming in the video is not a happy person. They are someone who feels fundamentally unsafe in the world, and they are using anger as a blunt instrument to try and build a fence around themselves. At the inverse mind, we believe that true power doesn't come from getting the manager. It comes from self-mastery. It comes from the ability to be inconvenienced without being diminished. It comes from the strength to be kind when someone else is being cruel. The next time you encounter a Karen, I want you to remember, their outburst is a confession of their own powerlessness. You don't have to join them in that darkness. You can choose to be the person who stays in the light, who stays regulated, and who knows that their worth is not determined by a coupon, a parking spot, or the opinion of a stranger. If you're ready to keep building your psychological toolkit and look past the surface of human behavior, then subscribe to The Inverse Mind now. We're digging into the whys so you can master the hows. And I want to hear from you. What is the most effective way you've ever handled a public confrontation? Let's share our strategies in the comments and turn this community into a resource for de-escalation and peace. Please remember, the more you understand the mind, the less it can control you. I'll see you in the next one.